So, our API is now basically finished. And so in this final video of the section, we're gonna quickly create documentation for our API directly in Postman. And that's right, we can easily create some quick documentation right in Postman. And it's really important to have API documentation in place because this is how we communicate to team members or even to our final users of the API, how they can actually use it in practice. So let me now show you how it works. Now, before we can actually create the documentation, let's just do some cleanup here. For example, get rid of this request. All right. Another thing that I want to do is here in the logging endpoint, we actually expose our password here. And so that's not a good idea. And so what I'm going to do is to create an environment variable which is going to hold this password. Since it's always the same, that should be no problem. So remember how we do that? Well, we come here to managing the environments. And so here we simply add another one. So password, so test 1, 2, 3, 4. And here this is not correct, so password. So update it, and now let's do the same here in the production one as well. So password, test 1, 2, 3, 4. And so, no, not add, but let's close that. And so here I can now then go ahead and use that, and not in a string, but like this. So password. So let's try that. And this gives us this weird error, but our password is actually here. So probably what we need to do is to actually really put the quotes here. So let's try that. And so now indeed we're successfully logged in. So save that now. Okay. And so now what we should do is to actually create a description for each and every request that we have in our collection. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that. I will just exemplify it here with the first one. Okay. So let's actually close these other ones. And so now here we can add a description. And so let's just say, use this endpoint to create a new tour. Okay. And so again, you should now do this exact same thing for all of your requests if your goal is to really publish and share your API. Okay. Then the same thing applies to folders. Okay. And not rename, but add it. And so in each of these folders, we can actually also add a description. And so let's just say something random, like you can get all tours, create new ones, and edit and delete tours. There are also special endpoints for some special requirements. Okay, so again, this is totally random, and I wouldn't really publish something like this for my own API, but here we really just want to test how it works. Okay, as you can see down here, you can also use markdown here. Okay, so for example, to make text bold, you can, I think it works like this. Yeah, it looks like it does. And so, yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff here. Okay. You can also probably create a description on Naters itself. So let's say the Naters API contains endpoints for tours, users, and reviews. And then again, a bunch of stuff. Like you could describe your authentication process or your permissions and really everything the user needs to know in order to use this API. Okay, so you should always add description to all the requests, to all the folders, and also to, of course, the collection itself. Oh, and we can actually also describe the query parameters in a query string. So let's do that here. And we can also say it supports greater than, less than equal, greater than, and less than operators. So again, just an example here. And let's save it now to the request. And so with this, I think we should be ready to actually publish our API documentation. And so for doing that, let's just go here to the collections option and then down here, publish documentations. And so that should then open up a browser window. And for me, it did outside of my screen. So let me just get that here. And so now you can choose the environment. So here we should have a list of our environments, which for some reason we do not have. So that's weird. But anyway, we didn't want to use any environment anyway, because that would then replace our environment variables with their real values. And we don't want that. For example, we used the environment variable on the password so that then later in the documentation, it's not really visible. Okay, so we really want to use no environment. Now we could also use a custom domain, but that's only for paid users. Okay, then we could also change all of the styling of the API, so to match it with your brand colors. But again, that's not necessary in this case. And so let's actually go ahead and publish it. And so now this is actually public. So everyone can view your documentation now on this URL. Now for some reason it didn't really update all the changes that we just did before. So that's a bit weird. So let's actually go back to Postman and see what's going on. Maybe it has to do with this rotating thing here. So I will just quit Postman and open it again. And let's hope that fixes it. So if we now reload here, then we get all our changes actually here. So you see the description that we added for the Naders collection. Okay, then also the description for this folder and the description for this request. And finally, as the fourth description, also for this parameter. Okay, here we do then get the URL environment variable instead of the actual URL. Now, of course, you might want to actually give the real URL here, and for that, you could simply use another environment. So up here, you can actually see all the environments, but they are private. So right now, no one can use them. But remember how in the first step, we could have actually created this documentation using one of the environments. And so probably we would have used the production environment for that. And so with that, we would then have the final production URL here in our API URLs, okay? Anyway, this is how the documentation looks like. And so here is the example request, and we can change that also to our own language. So in this case, Node.js. But if the user is, for example, doing a request using jQuery, then they can just use jQuery. Okay, so just to see this example request here. So with Node, it looks something like this. So here we have all our endpoints, and you can see that the ones who require authentication, they actually have this log icon here. And so in your description, you could now then add that, saying that you need to log in order to access this endpoint, and also how you can actually log in, okay? Or you can also describe that here in the authentication section, right? So ideally, you would have descriptions for all of this. Oh, and here I see that we actually forgot to replace the real password, but never mind, as this is really just some example. Okay, but of course, you get all the requests that we had in our Postman also right here. Okay, now another nice feature here is this Run in Postman button. And so if someone has Postman installed on their computer, all they need to do is to click here and then open with their Postman application. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because, of course, I already have it in my Postman. But otherwise, this is a really nice feature for your users to then go ahead and right away start experimenting with your API. Okay, and I think that's it actually. So this wraps up our section, and our API is now finally really completed. So again, congratulations for making it this far in the course. We've already covered so much ground here together. Now next up, there is a very exciting section ahead, where we will finally build the user face for the Nader's website. So basically, we're going to use templates to create a completely dynamic website based on all the data that we already have in our database. And that's really cool, and so I can't wait to show that to you.